I think we all know that the Bible wasn't originally written in chapters and verses, but in books. And in most Bibles, in the beginning of a chapter, you find maybe headings, or sometimes in the chapter you find some headings. This chapter, the heading in the ESV version here that they have, the heading is Joseph tests his brothers. Okay, so this is now the conclusion to Genesis chapter 44. So the heading of Joseph testing his brothers, that kind of then, before we even read the text, make our minds already go in a certain direction. So in general, in most cases, well, actually I would say, I guess in all cases, I'm not really, don't like the headings because the translators, they with the headings lead us in a specific way, depending on what they what they believe in ultimately. Now in this case, I mean, yes, this is what is happening, but I think it's always best for us to read the text ourselves more with an open mind and try to understand what the text is saying before just jumping into it. Now I know what I'm doing is basically leading you as well in what I believe the text is saying, and I might be wrong. Therefore, for that reason, you always need to read. When I study this material, I read what other people say, lots of different commentaries on it from different perspectives. And I try to, ultimately I mention in some places where the people say something, they're saying something with which I don't agree, I disagree with. And here's another reason why I think they might be wrong. So yes, when it gets to headings, this is, for that reason I don't like it. That it is important that you always read the text yourself. You have the Holy Spirit. That does not imply that other people are wrong every time. They might be right. Don't just depend, understand me correctly, on the Holy Spirit. Why I'm saying that is not because you can't depend on the Holy Spirit. It's because which Holy Spirit? It's easy for our spirit to speak and shout a lot louder than the Holy Spirit, and then we just say it's the Holy Spirit speaking. I mean, I know lots of people like that who claim to have the perfect because the Holy Spirit told them, and then it's actually, you need to ask which Spirit? Which Holy Spirit? Your Spirit or the Spirit of God, the Holy Spirit? Okay. So that's kind of a long introduction, but in this case, with this heading, Joseph testing his brothers, yes, it leads us and it shows us, okay, this is actually what is happening. In the teaching, I kind of explained that this is not Joseph being having this evil plan, this conspiracy theory of trying to get back at his brothers. It's not this theory or plan of getting rid of them and then keeping Benjamin there and they having a great time there in Egypt as leaders in the country while the brothers are languishing up there in the north and their father dies kind of idea. Right? I explained that this does not fit with the story, neither with the character of Joseph. So in that sense, yes, sure, this is what he's doing. The other logical conclusion is that he is testing his brothers. And I agree with that in this case, right? So yes, he is testing his brothers. Because do they really feel guilt for what they did? We've seen how the previous chapter ended with them having this meal, and then how this chapter starts with Joseph letting them go early in the morning, but telling the servant to fill up the bags and put the silver cup in that he drank from and that he used for divination. Might have used, because I don't believe he used it for that, right? Which others would have used in his, if they were not believers in God. Right? And he had that cup sent put into Benjamin's bag. Then they were let out, not far from the city. When they were far down the road, when Joseph told his servant to catch up to them and tell them, "No, who found this? He'll be my slave," kind of idea. Not that. He said, actually, how could you do something like this? Did you think you will get away with this? After I gave you all the food and you had this party and everything, and you do this to me, pay me back. Okay, and that surely would have shown back to how could you have done this to me 20 odd years earlier, selling me as a slave, and that ought to, right, have put them on this track of thinking, and it actually did, and they actually, when the guy caught up, and there's then this as well, a connection between the Laban Rachel story earlier, where Rachel stole the household gods. So the cup is kind of like that. And then Jacob says, with whom you find, that person will die. The same here, this guy comes, he searches for it, and like there, starts with Leah, and then go down through all, get to Rachel. But they didn't find it because Rachel was sitting on, because it's that time of the month. And here they start with the eldest, and they did find it. Okay, so there's difference. So then it's like, oh, we will be, but they said the same thing. If you find him with whose back, that person will die. Kind of, the rest of us will be slaves. They found Benjamin's back. Benjamin's days like Judah. No. Okay, you. I mean, the servant said, no, you all can go. Benjamin stays. He'll be the slave, the servant. The brothers tore their clothes, different from what they did before with Joseph. And they returned back to the city. And there Joseph gave them again a chance. No. You can all go, only he stays. What will they do? Right? Are they really sorry about what they did wrong before by selling Joseph? Are they going to do the same thing? Oh, wow, okay, we're good, we can go. Benjamin stays kind of idea. Benjamin stays in slavery, we are free. We have the food, we have everything else, even the money. Will they be like that again? Or are they going to differ? The previous with Joseph, Judah was, let's sell him, make some money here, 20 pieces of silver. And this time, and most likely as well, this is the main reason because Judah did it there, that Judah, as the leader by the time, Judah's tribe, the leading tribe by that time, well, not the oldest, but the leading tribe by that time when they were going through the desert on their way to the promised land. So he had to, in a certain sense, they had to kind of recover his position. So maybe that is part of it. But I think as well, the more important part is that Judah was the one to sell him. Judah was the one to come up with the idea, let's sell him. So therefore now Judah is the one to say, okay, I will stay in his place. Right, so therefore, this movement is away from Reuben. Something else as well, we know Reuben in the story with Rachel's slave girl that he had intercourse with, which he wasn't supposed to do, and he'll pay for that. His father will remind him of that later. That was an act of hatred towards his father. So lots of that. I think it's more to do with the fact that we're there now, and Judah was ultimately the one to come up with this idea. So now Judah is the one to as well to put. So if Judah is the one coming up with the idea of selling into slavery, is now the one willing to. Okay, so that shows as well that big change that happened in Judah's life. And so yes, Judah speaks up, and he becomes he starts speaking. He has this long speech concerning why Joseph had to let Benjamin go, and why he will stay in Benjamin's place. We've seen in the speech how he starts off with, right, we told you this is not a good idea to bring him but we did it. Why? Because you asked, and that shows that you can trust us. The second thing is, our father, he won't survive this. It's his only wife's. And through that speech, we've seen then those words that Judah, unlike before, where they hated Joseph because he was a beloved son of Rachel, now he was just a beloved son of his father's old age. And there's only one wife, Rachel. Nothing. So that whole hating, because of this hatred between Jacob and Leah, and Rachel and all of that, the naming of the sons that we've seen, it's not a thing anymore. He's willing to let bygones be bygones. He's willing to admit that, yes, they're not that important. Their father has but he didn't say because Rachel is a beloved wife, son of the old age, like in chapter 37 as well, why Jacob loved Joseph more. And then lastly, but I promised him, and I can't go back, and I can't look my dad in the face again and see the sorrow. Before, when they did it to Joseph, they had no problem with seeing their dad sorry and sad and never recovering. Never did they tell him the truth. Never did they say, okay, we'll go down and maybe find him and bring him back. Never, ever was there mention of that. They just kept on living their lives. They said, Joseph is dead, as Judah is going to say here. Right? And but now he changed. They're not having fun and using the money they got from selling Joseph, but they're not willing to let Benjamin go through the same thing. Judah, who sold him, is now willing to stay and be the slave for the sake of his father, for the sake of doing the right thing. So sure, a huge change in Judah. It took 20 odd years for this change to happen. And through it all, God was at work. He was at work in Joseph, He was at work in Judah. If God was just at work in Joseph, then this would not have happened. If God wasn't at work in the brothers as well, then they would just hear after, like, oh, let him, it's fine, Benjamin, we don't care. Our dad dies, so what? We inherit everything, right? No. God was not only, we only read that God was with Joseph. We don't read in the text that God was with the brothers, and yes, there's a story about Tamar, but we've even seen the worst part of Judah there. We don't see this change happening. We only see this change now, years later on, how they did change. And that change, like God changed, well, at least was with Joseph, God was the brothers, and he was busy working with them. They had to change. That hatred for Joseph, and then Benjamin ultimately as well, had to change. Their hearts had to change. Their dead hearts had to be made alive. Joseph, yes, he was suffering through it all, but through that suffering they were changing. Through that suffering, God was going to provide not only for his family a safe place, but for other people as well. It doesn't sound fair. When Joseph was in prison, he said, it's not fair. I was stolen from my people. And here I'm in a pit. Right? Looking back at when his brothers put him in a pit, when he was there in prison. He didn't like it. Okay, but God was with him in his struggles. And while he did not understand why he's struggling, why he's suffering so much, he was just doing the right thing. God was at work. Okay, and there's so many things happening in our own lives as well, where we struggle and suffer, and we don't understand. In Myanmar, with the COVID and the coup and the earthquake and the hurricanes and the typhoons, and we don't, I mean, so many people dying and living, and then rainy season starting early now there in Mandalay, and all of these things. People asking questions. So many people in Myanmar can't live. The young people had to flee. Some cases they're not even allowed to, like now in Rakhine state, the AA is not allowing even young people, men and women, to leave the state. Not speaking of going anywhere outside. They're not even allowed to go to Yangon, for example, right? So there's so many of these questions. Why? So often people ask me the why question. And I don't know the answer. They don't know the answer. We don't know the answer. Joseph was asking this question a lot of times in his life. Why? He stated it. But now we can look back at this and we can see that in Judah, how God was changing, how God changed him through this. In Joseph, so Judah and the rest of the brothers being changed into accepting, right, and not hating their father, becoming what they're supposed to be. Joseph being used as a tool to save so many people, millions of people. All of this worked together, okay? All of it worked together. Yes, I always say, I think some people might say, but couldn't God just kind of stop the drought and the famine? Yes, sure, God could. But this whole plan was at work, because as well there was this idea of the people that need to go to a safe place where they can grow into a nation. All of that had to happen as well. Otherwise they would not have been able to grow into this nation. God knows what He's doing. We can trust Him. Okay? Sin is real. Repercussions of sin. And we can still burn our hands. You can tell your child not to put their hand in the fire, but you can't take all fires away. You can ban all weapons, but you can't ban knives, because how are you going to cut the bread? People always find something to do with something that is usable and kill others, for example, right? So in that, knowing all of that, God is doing the right thing. Okay? So that question about why couldn't God just kind of stop the famine, was because that sin is playing a role, and God is letting these things in, therefore ordering this thing, so that this evil, something good could come, like we're going to see in the story, like out of Jesus' death on the cross. Something evil, the worst thing ever done on this planet. The only time that something bad happened to someone good ever, Jesus on the cross. God allowed for it, for His glory, and through that our salvation. So yes, we might not always understand what God is doing and why God is doing it, but through this chapter we can see that people changed. All of these things happened. These pieces of the puzzle are starting to come together and to explain to us that what happened in these people. Okay? So these are some of the lessons we can learn from this, and the things we can take from it is we can't always understand. We don't always have answers to all the why questions. But what we do know is we can trust God. That is as well the story of the book of Job. When we get to the book of Job, it's about wisdom. Who has wisdom ultimately? Whom can we trust? God. We can trust God. It's not Job is not a story about suffering. Like, this is not as much a story of suffering, but it's a story ultimately of wisdom. Okay, God knows what He's doing. We can trust Him. It all seemed improbable, right? All of this seemed improbable. Being sold as a slave, being then put in prison because of Potiphar's wife. And now, all of this, it seems totally impossible. But God made it possible. Okay? God knows what He's doing. And God, we can trust. Not the dollar on the dollar, like it say, in the money God, but in the one true God we can trust. Because the dollar God lets you down. Sometimes the worth of the money falls, and what are you left with? But God never does it. Never ever. Even if you don't understand, God knows what He's doing. He's changing people. Like He changed the brothers. So yeah, let that be then as well. When there are people in our family or in our churches, and we suffer and it seems as if they're just doing evil and getting away with it, we can trust God, because ultimately God knows what He does, and He's doing, and we need to trust God and let God be God and submit to Him, because He alone has all wisdom. And so therefore we need to glorify Him and let God and Him be who He is. So yeah, as well, there might be people in your life who will hurt you very much, and you want to maybe get back at them. But think of that hurt as something temporary, even though it might be very bad, and how that hurt actually can be used by God to change that person. It doesn't sound fair, right? Joseph had to suffer for 20 years. It doesn't sound fair at all. But what is ultimately more important? Your hurt or eternity? What is more important? What was more important here? Joseph's hurt, being sold as a slave, or the eternal destiny of, well, firstly the temporary destiny of the people going to Canaan, finding a safe place where they can grow into a nation before they go to Canaan, and then ultimately secondly the most important question, the eternal destiny. What is most important? No, I know. I don't want to suffer as well. Lots of people through the years has hurt me as well, and I've hurt people. Unluckily, But what is most important? We must never forget that. And God always has the most important thing in mind and under control, and that is eternity. 70 years here, a little bit here, here, doesn't matter how evil and how bad it is. There's nothing compared to eternity. Don't forget it. So let God be God, forgive people. I remember about forgiveness just when my uncle, one of my uncles, was killed by rioters. I'm not going to speak about colors of people here, because that's not the thing here. I know some people shout and sing, kill the boer, kill the farmer kind of idea. Right? When my uncle was killed by rioters, and my dad told us, he didn't say, okay, now kill the boer, kill those other people doing it. His words to us were that forgive them, pray for them. Pray for your enemy, forgive them. So as well, this is what we're supposed to do. That does not mean there's no justice and you must not seek justice, but it means there's no hatred, like ultimately Joseph's going to forgive them. So look at hurt in the right way. Okay? It's not yours to judge. Look at eternity. Look at the big picture like God is. It might be impossible for you to see a drone's view of the sky, but God does. So trust Him.